The atomic relationship, a more complex view. 9. It is the sun fire itself that sustains solar gravity by dividing an atomic element into its subsets of composition. The reality of what holds the nucleus together then becomes the essence of what ties our solar system as one. The atomic bonds are what holds the particles of atomic structure together. It requires that there is an equal but opposite reality of energy sustained within an atomic bond to produce the creation of an element. Or more simply, the definition of a balanced state, called mass, requires that. That means when the bond between these forces is released or forced apart, there will be an action and a reaction that follows on an atomic energy scale. This energy contained is proven by the heat released from an atomic bond in thermonuclear weapons. Thereby we know the energy involved and captured in the creation of an element is massive. To achieve a stable element containing this energy, capable of sustaining itself in a balanced state for long periods, there must be an equivalent of the opposite energy in place to hold this relationship of energy within a specific environmental state. Or described more simply, a great deal of heat is required to achieve a balanced state and must then be influenced by an equal amount of cold. To achieve extreme stability, there must be no functioning gap between what is hot and cold. To make this sustainable, the two energies involved in an atomic nucleus must be opposite, so extreme they do not exchange energies. A footnote to this is the oblong pattern of planetary orbits are likely influenced by cycles of fire close and fire far away, altering the heat release followed by the initial ignition of the sun itself. As is consistent with all planetary objects, there would have been peaks and valleys on the sun rock which formed alternating cycles or high energy spots. As these became reduced, peaks and valleys of energy and the deformation of the sphere of fire most likely produce power to capture the planets of this solar system before these peaks and valleys are consumed by the fire itself, to then stabilize the sphere and make uniform the fire itself. 10. The composite understanding of basic elemental structure that the sun represents as a relationship to heat and light is then as follows. Nuclear fire releases the energy that controls the bond in an atomic nucleus. What is heat energy is released to the fire. What is cold energy is released to its initiating state as described below. What is left of the bond itself, however, retains its attachment as a photon by being compressed into what can be called similar to laser light, a string that holds both ends together, so to speak. Or more simply, to achieve the energy intensity of a true laser beam, there is an action and a reaction established. We know that sunlight is a true laser beam because the light retains considerable energy even though it travels through an incredible amount of time and space. We know it retains a type of connection with the sun because the energy is very focused and has no critical disconnect from its source. Sunfire roars, or this radiation revealed by sunlight constructs a rhythm as a result of that roar that functionally ties both ends of the string together. Or more simply, the radiation refers to the bounce or pulse that a rhythm represents on the energy associated with the light. The laser sunlight take a mirror and reflect sunlight onto a darkened wall, proving a very little diffraction exists after 90+ million miles. Most diffraction seen probably belongs to the mirror. This ties both ends of the action and reaction together with a string of photons, for lack of a better word. The energy of radiation rides that string as a rhythm. The net effect of that is solar gravity, because the radiation is an energy driven into the atomic structure of this planet, thereby tying it to the sun. Sunlight laser string itself is a path that energy needs to accomplish an anchor. A photon is then the energy of electrons in motion that have been transferred from a nucleus to the final compression bond of energy from what escapes an atomic nucleus just before the element begins to deteriorate and then destruct into fire. A light bulb on Earth creates this deterioration, but is not enough to destroy the element, only to remove a small part of its energy. In terms of atomic environments, the bond between proton and neutron is created when they smash themselves together. That action creates a compression to exist at the impact zone. That then crushes tiny bits and pieces from within that zone, standing in the way of a perfect fit between these two sides of a nucleus. These bits and pieces are called electrons. They form the atmosphere of an atomic nucleus. The electrical relationship of force, nothing comes in, nothing goes out. The boundary wall, holding the element as an individual atomic identity. Constructed because of that action and reaction of creating mass, a relationship of opposing forces being compressed by bonding to become a balanced element. 11. To a more balanced or more detailed definition includes the pulsations of fire, rhythms of the roar of the sun does represent a similar magnetic structure to that called voltage, electrical signature. The strong force known to man is developed by introducing for fundamental conversion heat into the atomic environment. Heat is force influenced by speed. Energy effects are that force associated with that speed produces an action or reaction, thereby increasing the distance that electrons orbit the nucleus. Or more simply, the rise of an electron orbit is the energy to be released. The fall of that orbit in balance return to the atomic environment, or for a simple illustration, the ebb and flow of ocean tides. The roar of fire presents us with cycles per second, so to speak. These are present in the radiation associated with sunlight. What can be compressed is a critical link, the perfect fit that ties the neutron and controls the area between the proton. The neutron is an anchor or cold, thereby the balancing of heat energy for simple conversation. The proton is heat, or where fundamental action or reaction visible to our world arises. It is the critical link that produces the sunlight laser string. The energy that compresses the bond, which holds the opposites together, is where photons come from. The critical link between the two opposite energies is different than energy for a fire, and composes what can be compressed or exploded rather than burned. Return to review the reality of a black hole one last time. As it is established by our own universities, when a sun dies, it first grows much hotter, which depends. More fuel is being burned, then explodes as stability falls. And that collapses onto itself within the center of the sun or a star during this process. When it explodes, the law stands firm that for every action there will be an opposite reaction, the basis of an atomic environment. Within an explosion of this size, because the center is heated to its escape velocity, the energy release explodes the boundaries that contain it. The actual explosion originates at the center. The extreme pressures and temperatures cause the release, and force pushes out, establishing this scenario. Any and all energy that cannot escape fast enough must turn back upon itself, confined to the only solution available to make a black hole, or more simply turn itself inside out, becoming the opposite of what it was. This is the creation of dark energy or dark mass, so-called. The end result of that action, and its consequent reaction, is a neutron string. The black hole compresses mass by removing its ability to move, stripping atomic nucleus of its electrons to create one true solid. Without movement, there is no heat. Thereby cold is created. Without space, there is no pressure applied to shape, change, or move. This true solids or heat does not affect this except at its core. The result of a supernova explosion is a plasma moves between the escaping heat and the returning energy forced back, because it could not escape fast enough. The plasma moves through the core, or the very center of this black hole, is fed like a wire through a reducing die. Every black hole has a core passage, because without combining into one solid package, or when combining into one solid package without moving, where the combining initially takes place, there will be a less than perfect seal, an area where dark energy and mass, as is the essence of being the opposite of heat energy, comes to attraction that draws in that heat plasma. That end result constructs a relationship between what was heat and what is cold, turning heat into cold by forcing it in one direction only through a gun barrel of dark energy in dark mass, the true solid. Or more simply, plasma is drawn by electrical attraction into the core deformation of a black hole. It is then extruded by the removal of all heat, being compressed by what cannot be deformed further, and then exits that environment by what is essentially a refrigeration process. Extreme pressures, reduction in size, the recombination as a neutron string then pushes the heat out. The neutron string, which will then redefine itself as an atomic union because opposites attract, after the resultant string finds itself an appropriate partner in space. Where the black hole is, in essence, the universe of energy recycler. That fundamental change from the essence of heat to the reality of cold creates an attraction or convection. Thereby, when the string of cold accidentally finds an expression of heat, an immediate pull to collapse the string into an atomic environment is exerted on the anchor of that neutron string at the exit area of the black hole, increasing its velocity to break that relationship, and then to assemble with what is now called a proton in an atomic or an elemental environment. The longer the string created before it releases, the larger the element will be. We return to solar gravity. The fire on the sun holds back the neutron. For every action there is a reaction, which has become a collection of free neutrons collecting from the center out. These do inhibit the heat from entering into the sun rock. Remembering an equal amount of cold must exist to sustain a balanced elemental state of energy called mass. Because of that fire and the release of dark energy to push cold inside, as is a black hole, rather than heat outside. An attraction to the sun rock itself is created by the fire burning atomic bonds, which then compresses and elongates the string and controls the force being generated as an energy relationship returned by the proton as radiation. Radiation is a drill bit that anchors energy into a planetary object. That radiation links a photon into an atomic environment of Earth, establishing an anchor similar but not the same as a magnetic attraction. Thereby the sun and its planets revolve around each other. 12. We complete the essence of mass in the following words, having described the black hole, which is created by a dying sun exploding. The black hole then results from a central explosion occurring immediately after the last Big Bang. More simply, the reality of energy released at the core multiplies in all directions, forced out, but acting unilaterally against that center point. That which is central to the explosion then cannot escape itself, becoming even more agitated and excited. Because of battery energy already established as a defined speed or force in existence, this force pushes the remainder of the energy released back upon itself. As a result, the last or most central part of the exploding mass, which cannot escape, must then be physically turned back upon itself, because the law of energy release, the bonds are broken, is, even if it cannot escape, yet it must do something. It cannot stand still, as represented by the law. For every action in energy, there will be an equal opposite reaction. The energy then concentrates the mass. It originates from having already released bonds and structures forced to turn against the mass itself if it finds no other release point or escape hatch, so to speak. The energy cannot go out because of the explosion that preceded it, so it goes in. To achieve this, the mass must be large enough to control the explosion. That process is a side effect of extreme pressure and temperatures, as in a refrigeration effect. Also turns that mass fundamentally cold. No room is necessary. The heat is evicted, increasing the velocity of the preceding explosion itself. Thereby everything is made to fit tightly, because all individual elements are abandoned to become a true solid. It does not then move even a little. The pressures applied, the energy already released, remove all remaining structure contained by the mass, destroying all bond, holding that mass apart, and crush it into one single element. That process eliminates all but a central port by which the last tiny fragments of space may be ejected from the central gun, for lack of a better word. A process so violent it sucks in more mass at this central point to be crushed as it is stripped of its structure, and reduced to the essence of dark mass itself as it leaves the gun without heat. Thereby the essence of dark mass and its energy of release constructs what is fundamentally one of the basic building blocks of energy, transformed or reformed into atomic structure and bond, as its neutron string then finds and captures an essential essence of heat in space. Falling through the black hole barrel can reconfigure heat into cold, dark mass. Acceleration then becomes or applies anti-energy, the opposite effect of heat or dark energy. The resultant debris of structure and bonding participants released at this port have been changed. The limited flow around the single true solid called a black hole in extreme conditions does not attach itself to the black hole, but is stripped of its movement anyway, becoming a lesser form of antimass or dark matter. It is the central hole barrel effect that produces a universal gravitational pull holding galaxies together. Ejecting neutron strings that then tie themselves back into atomic structures as neutrons when united with the heat energy to form an atomic element we know. Thereby the speed of ejection through the black hole can be summarized or measured by the speed of rotation as in an atomic nucleus due to the resultant spin and debris field of electrons. Or more simply, the purpose of this writing is, there is no damn tiny hole into which all the mass in this universe can fit. A black hole is the densest mass in existence. That fact establishes no light escapes, making sunlight impossible, which removes even the slightest possibility of a theory so blind and so ignorant as to suggest all the laws in the universe can be discarded to assume our solar gravity is a tiny hole in the center of the sun. Thereby we can bring a 10 million degree fire here. It is just plain insane and without sense. These terrorists are attempting to destroy our planet and must be stopped. 13. In an elemental attempt to stop your absolute horrific damn insanity, this assembly of theoretical beginnings is attached just to initiate possibilities more. Or more simply, we begin the process of looking beyond elements by conceiving the relationship that build the two basic developments that are used to construct the foundations of our time, called as an energy occupying space, or every portion of space contains an energy. At the opposite end of that conception is heat, as it controls the expansion of space, thereby creating distance and motion, which is the elemental beginning of time. Cold at its essence is a construction similar to mass because it is potential energy locked up in a specific reality by a definable relationship. Heat is at its essence a visible relationship, or more distinctly a force revealed by motion rather than held in place as a mass. Or more simply, mass itself is a relationship identified by structure. Energy released itself is a relationship with the expansion or contraction of that structure, while structure itself is the elemental design that gives dimensional space its time. Participating in that relationship is light. You are now educated. The site is www.trialoflife.info.